WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 o'clock in Dakar and Accra, 7 o'clock in Porto Novo. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Ghana's inflation slightly drops by 0.8% to 21.2% in the month of April 2025.
Ghana's national year-on-year inflation slowed to 21.2% in April 2025, and this is largely driven by a moderation in both food and non-food prices.
ECOWAS parliamentarians converge in Lomé to discuss reforms in cost of air transport across the sub-region. Political parties in Mali announced a massive rally on Friday to demand an immediate return to constitutional rule.
Constater que depuis un certain temps,
and we have noted that for some time now, a new threat has been looming over democratic criticism in our countries, clearly acquired at the cost of the blood of other Malians.
And 5th West African Episcopal Conference gets underway in Dakar with focus on security and rights issues. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Grateful for your time with us on Newslink and a warm welcome to our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. This edition begins in Ghana, where the country's inflation for the month of April has declined to 21.2% from the previous rate of 22.4% in the month of March. The drop was largely influenced by decline in food and non-food inflation compared to the same period last year. Speaking at a news conference in Accra today, the new government statistician Dr. Alhassan Idrisu noted that the current inflation rate is the 5th consecutive decline since December 2024. Dr. Idrisu further advised that there is the need to sustain macroeconomic stability and pursue measures to reform the downward inflation trend. Here is the government statistician Dr. Alhassan Idrisu.
We are seeing inflation decline on year-on-year basis since December 2024. On month-on-month basis, we see that the general price level in April was 0.8%, as you can see on the screen. The CPI for April 2025 was 258.6, up from the March 2025 CPI of 256.5. The increase in month-on-month inflation for April 2025 signify price pressures in the month, despite the slowdown in the year-on-year inflation. Ghana's national year-on-year inflation slowed to 21.2% in April 2025, as I mentioned earlier. And this is largely driven by a moderation in both food and non-food prices, though food inflation remains elevated at 25%. On month-on-month basis, however, food inflation increased whilst non-food inflation was maintained. Year-on-year inflation was higher for locally produced items at 22.7% compared to 17.7% for imported items.
And that's government statistician Dr. Alhassan Idrisu. Still in Ghana, the Member of Parliament for Old Tafo Vincent Eko Asafua has signaled his intention to seek a review of the Supreme Court's decision to dismiss his injunction application against the suspension of the Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo, as he is unsatisfied with the reasoning. The 3-2 majority ruling was delivered by a 5-member panel presided over by the acting Chief Justice Paul Bafo-Boni. The court is expected to release the full reasoning by May 21. From Accra, WADR's Nadide Tete reports.
Ghana Supreme Court on May 6, 2025, by 3-2 majority decision, dismissed a case filed by Old Tafo MP Vincent Eko Asafua. He was asking the court to stop the precedent suspension of the Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo. A 5-member panel led by acting Chief Justice Paul Bafo-Boni ruled that the MP's request had no merit. Justices Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu and Ernest Gaiwu disagreed with the majority. Lawyers for the MP, led by former Attorney General Godfred Wadr, made their case while the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Rimsai, opposed the application. Former Attorney General Godfred Wadr explained why they were arguing for an injunction.
Of course, clearly, the spirit of Article 146 we're talking about. But the Supreme Court itself imported that into Article 146 in 2005 when it authenticated on the youth matter. But of course, the Supreme Court was silent on whether there ought to be notification to the Chief Justice and obtaining of his or her comment before triggering the process. And that is what is in this week for them.
Deputy Attorney General Dr. Rimsai maintained that nothing bars the President from continuing the process of addressing the petitions against the Chief Justice and her subsequent suspension.
The finding of prima facie case is not automatic that the Chief Justice or the person who is the subject matter of the petition has been removed. It is not at all. So it may come out that the petition has not been of merit and the Chief Justice will be restored to her position. I am always surprised that people have concluded that the fact that a prima facie case is found, then it means that the Chief Justice automatically is removed from office. And you could see that is what actually motivates these motions that have been filed. I think the underlying understanding, which I consider a misunderstanding, is that the plaintiff believe that when a prima facie case is established, then it's a gone issue. But it is not.
The Member of Parliament for Otafor, Vincent Ekwasifua, said he may seek a review of the decision if unsatisfied with it.
I don't think there's the end of the road. But let's just get the reasoning first. When we get the reasoning, of course, the 3-2 ruling suggests that the Supreme Court itself sees some reasoning in the arguments that we made.
The full reasoning of the court is expected to be made available by May 21, 2025. Until then, the decision stands unless reviewed by the Supreme Court. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Moving on to the Sahel region, particularly in Mali, where tension has escalated between political actors and the military over the dissolution of political parties. To pressure the government, the parties are calling for a new demonstration in Bamako on Friday, May 9th. The protests will denounce their dissolution and demand an end to the military transition. As a reminder, their meeting last Saturday at the Bamako Cultural Center was prevented by hundreds of supporters of the ruling military who stormed the building. Abdullah Hassan has more in this report.
To maintain pressure on the government, which dissolved the political parties a week ago, political party leaders are calling for street protests this time. The rally is scheduled to take place this Friday at 2 p.m. on Independence Boulevard. It was at this same location in the center of the Malian capital that social actors demonstrated for several months in 2020, leading to the fall of late Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's regime. This time, the political parties are demanding an end to the transition and a return to constitutional order. Ibrahim Tamega is one of the leaders of the Convergence Party, which is one of the organizers of the demonstration.
Nous avons constaté que depuis un certain temps,
and we have noted that for some time now, a new threat has been looming over democratic criticism in our countries, clearly acquired at the cost of the blood of other Malians. Why? After having taken the institutions of the Republic hostage, do they still want to assassinate what little remains of democracy? The parties have mobilized and decided to say yes to democracy, yes to individual and collective freedoms, and therefore no to attacks on individual and collective freedoms.
Et donc non aux atteintes aux libertés individuelles et collectives.
According to a well-informed source, this gathering of political parties could be banned and political activities suspended this Wednesday upon a decision of the Council of Ministers.
Abdullah Hassan reporting. In neighboring Niger, several military officers scheduled to retire in 2025 may be retained in their positions within the army. This decision is reportedly driven by the country's ongoing security crisis. Nigerian authorities have said that it is essential to mobilize all available soldiers to address the prevailing security threats. However, the decision has sparked anger among some members of the military and among the general population. In contrast, civil society organizations in the country have expressed support for the measure. Two notable figures from these organizations, Abibu Isaka, a member of the Niger Standing Front, and Abdurrahmani Idi Hassan, national coordinator of the Niger New Movement, have publicly responded to this recent development.
This
decision comes to point nommé. It comes to point nommé because it is truly for the homeland. I believe that these military personnel who should retire must make these sacrifices like any other Nigerian. We, who are civilians, today, we are also soldiers, and every Nigerian in his soul, in his heart, and wherever he is, he must consider himself a soldier because we are in a context of war and insecurity. And even military personnel who have retired, who are still fit, should be called to serve the homeland. This is really reasons that shouldn't even be put forward for why they want to keep them in their positions. They should have listened to the people from the start by appointing civilians, technocrats. Their role is to wage war, to preserve our territory, and to maintain peace and security throughout the Nigerian territory. This is not the time for them to come and tell us no. These are really reasons that don't hold water.
So you heard Abibo Isaka and Abdurrahmani Idi Hassan, the two main notable civil society actors in Niger.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The Beninese Foreign Minister Olusegun Bakari on Tuesday was received in Washington, D.C. by U.S. Deputy Secretary Christopher Lando. The meeting took place amid an increasingly tense security situation in Benin. A few weeks ago, the country recorded the deadliest terrorist attack against its soldiers. The two diplomats discussed deepening security relations between Benin and the United States. Benin seek greater support in the face of the growing terrorist threat in its northern region. As a reminder, a few months ago, the commander of the Africa Command AFRICOM, the Center for U.S. Military Operation in Africa, was received by Beninese President Patrice Talon. Moving on to Togo, ECOWAS parliamentarians have converged in the country's capital, Lomé, to discuss reforms to reduce the cost of air transport across the sub-region. This follows the meeting of the West African Organization's transport ministers at the end of 2024, who initiated reforms to this end in the name of regional integration by air. Augustine Colley has more in this report.
This meeting of parliamentarians follows the meeting of the regional organization's transport ministers in November 2024. During these occasions, the parliamentarians will examine the strategic decisions of the transport ministries aimed at lowering air transport prices in West Africa. The parliamentarians will also address excessive fees, taxes, and charges, which represent nearly 50% of the cost of a plane ticket in the region. The objective is to harmonize these charges at the community level through a regional complementary law in line with the standards of the International Civil Aviation Organization. Ultimately, ECOWAS aims to reduce the cost of air transport in the region in the name of regional integration through the EPR. During their meeting in July 2024, the ECOWAS Conference of Heads of State called for concrete actions to make air travel more accessible. The new reforms are due to come into force on January 1, 2026.
A report by WAD House Lomé correspondent Aziz Adam Sole and voiced by Augustine Colley. Back here in Senegal, the 5th West African Episcopal Conference continues today. More than 150 archbishops and bishops from 16 countries are gathering in Dakar for a General Assembly during which issues of justice and peace in the region will also be discussed. The election of a new pope, which commenced today at the Vatican, may also be briefly discussed. Some notable candidates from the continent will be in the conclave. Sankole Janko completes the story.
During the opening ceremony at the Grand National Theatre in Dakar, Monsignor Alexis Touabli Yulo, president of the United Episcopal Conferences of West Africa, called for true peace in Africa, which, according to him, can only be based on justice. Justice is not only for the elites, but above all for the people.
Et l'Église en Afrique de l'Ouest veut et doit y contribuer.
And the Church in West Africa wants and must contribute to this. Certainly,
Peace comes from God, but peace does not descend from heaven as a finished product or a ready-to-wear garment. No, peace is rather like a loincloth, a beautiful loincloth that we must weave together, each one contributing their own thread. We, the archbishops and bishops of West Africa, have decided to contribute the specific thread of the church that, let us not forget, is an expert in humanity.
Other problems plaguing the region will also be addressed, including the security crisis that undermined peace and fractured ECOWAS with the withdrawal of several member countries. This West African Episcopal meeting, which concludes next Sunday, comes amid the election of a new pope. The bishops will briefly discuss the issue, as Africa has some 20 candidates.
Okay, Sankole Janko with that report. In Nigeria, the country has received another negative rating on human security, as it is now ranked as the first country in the continent with the highest number of malnourished children. The country also ranked second globally, according to the United Nations Children Fund data published on Tuesday. The country's situation is worsened by a combination of factors including insecurity and climate change. Emoedet has more in the following report.
An estimated 2 million children in Nigeria are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, accounting for the second highest number of stunted children worldwide. The survey indicates a national prevalence rate of 32% of children under 5, adding that only 2 out of every 10 children affected currently have access to treatment. It further explains that states in northern Nigeria were the most affected by stunting and wasting, the two forms of malnutrition. UNICEF informs that 7% of women of childbearing age also suffer from acute malnutrition. This situation meant that only 17% of babies were exclusively breastfed during their first 6 months of life, as data suggests poor exclusive breastfeeding culture over the past decade. Just 18% of children aged 6 to 23 months are fed the minimum acceptable diet. The United Nations Children's Fund says malnutrition is a direct or underlying cause of 45% of all deaths of under 5 children. While calling for immediate intervention to reduce the number, UNICEF warns that high rates of malnutrition pose significant public health and development challenges for the country.
Emoedet filed that report. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, and we're live on wadr.org worldwide, and also we're live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Ghana's inflation slightly drops by 0.8% to 21.2% in the month of April 2025. ECOWAS parliamentarians converge in Lomé to discuss reforms and cost of air transport across the sub-region. Political parties in Mali announced a massive rally on Friday to demand an immediate return to constitutional rule. And the 5th West African Episcopal Conference gets underway in Dakar with focus on security and rights issues. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's take you to Liberia, where ahead of the 2025 regional exams, the West Africa Examination Council Liberia office has warned students and parents against campaign and payment of any illegal fees. The head of WAEC Liberia office emphasized the importance of proper preparation for the safety of students as the date for the West African Senior School Certificate Examination approaches. More than 53,000 senior high school candidates are expected to participate in this year's exams, which gets underway in May 15, 2025. As WADR's Abraham Parker reports, concerns have been raised about campaign practice where students gather in one location to study overnight before exams.
The regional head, Dali Boto, discouraged this practice, warning parents that allowing their children to leave home for extended periods not only poses safety risks but could also lead to disqualification. Schools found in camping will be sanctioned. According to Boto, students need a secure and safe environment, most especially at home, to prepare for an independent examination.
When they talk about WAEC, I said that they can feel if you just establish. They take money from candidates and they say they will go and make ways for them. They will bring heaven on earth for them. We want to say here that WAEC is not in the business of collecting flexibility fee. Don't pay any money to anyone before, during, and after the exam. If anybody insists that you should pay money to them, let us, and then we will take the appropriate action.
The regional head touched on several issues, among them the financial exploitation known as flexibility fees by individuals who claim to assist students with exam preparation. Concerning the role of examiners, Daddy Boto urged vigilance, integrity, and professionalism during the examination process. With the examination just days away, WAEC says it remains committed to ensuring a fair and secure environment for all participants. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Still in Liberia, the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College's Senior Course 46 have embarked on a study tour visiting the headquarters of the Armed Forces of Liberia, AFL. This visit is strategically aimed at understanding the AFL's pivotal role in disaster response and civil-military cooperation in humanitarian efforts. A release from the Armed Forces of Liberia highlights that the session was designed to familiarize the Senior Course 46 participants with the AFL's operational framework in disaster scenarios and in collaborative dynamics with international bodies and local authorities. The briefing encompassed crucial aspects such as importance of civil leadership in disaster management, the AFL's interaction with civilian organizations, and the mechanisms for information sharing and coordination among various government and non-government entities.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of Newslink takes us to Ghana, where reactions are trailing President John Mahama's plan to dismiss government appointees who failed to declare their assets latest by today, Wednesday, May 7, 2025. One of the institutions reacting to this decision is Ghana Integrity Initiative, the local chapter of Transparency International, which calls for stricter sanctions against government appointees who missed President Mahama's deadline for declaring their assets. Our guest is Mary Ada, Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, and she spoke in an exclusive interview with WADR's Accra correspondent Nadi Ditete.
On the issue of the president's statement, for us, we would say that is a way to go. A way to go because we have not had some of these directives in the past. So in the first instance, we commend him for taking that bold step. For us, we would have believed that the president's discretionary powers then places him in the position to have taken even more drastic action in the first instance, to serve as a big symbol or a sign that future occurrence of non-compliance will not be tolerated. However, since he added that by the end of today, those who do not comply, people who do not comply would not have their positions anymore, it's a good thing. And we say it's a good thing because we haven't had many of such happen in the past. However, as much as we are commending, it's now in our place to also ensure that we are monitoring to see how compliance is effected.
There are those who have said that the president has been lenient, too lenient for that matter, especially when he had said
too lenient. He should have sacked all of them, and that is to show that he will not tolerate such behavior in the future. But then we consider that the less than 48 hours deadline is also a good sign. But then we don't understand why anybody would receive an order that is given publicly by the president on record for every Ghanaian to hear would decide that they would not comply, it means that we need to pay attention, because the president is the ultimate power of state, and he gives directives, and his appointees decide that they would not take them. It beats the imagination that anybody would do that. Because we say so because you should know what you have and what you do not have.
And speaking of assets being declared as well, but one of the things that were displayed there yesterday was the president handing over 2 gifts, which came in the form of vehicles to the state because it exceeds the 20,000 cedis thresholds that they have set for themselves.
I believe that is in the right direction, because we're talking about issues around declaration of assets. And so if the president has put a certain frame within which his employees and himself must operationalize, and then that operationalization then gives us the opportunity to know what exactly people are getting. So above 20,000, certainly every vehicle in Ghana today may be above 20,000. I'm not sure there is a vehicle that is less than that. So it is a good sign that the president discloses his gift. If he wanted to keep it, but he has put restrictions to that when that happens, you should declare it and give it to the state. So that is a good thing that the president has shown a signal that everybody else should follow.
Mary Ada is the executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. And we can join Sankoli Chanko for details in the world of sports.
Let's begin the sports with FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup, because Senegal have booked a place in the quarterfinals of the FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup Seychelles 2025 after a resounding 7-3 win over Chile on Tuesday. The Senegalese secured their qualification after an impressive campaign so far as they finished top of Group C. Senegal took a full-time haul 9 points from their 3 games, scoring 17 goals in the process and conceding only 7. The West African Giants will take on Group D runners-up Italy in the next stage. Should Senegal advance past the Italians, they will face the winner of the tie between Belarus and Iran in the other semi-finals. Elsewhere, Sierra Leone registered their first defeat of the CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations after succumbing to South Africa 4-1 on Tuesday evening in the Group A encounter. Sierra Leone have been impressive in the campaign, having won all their previous matches before the defeat to South Africa. The victory puts South Africa second behind Sierra Leone, who remain top of Group A despite their disappointing loss. And in the UEFA Champions League, Inter Milan have secured a place in the UEFA Champions League final after a dramatic 4-3 win in the return leg and a 7-6 aggregate victory against Catalan giants Barcelona on Tuesday night. Alessandro Bastoni scored the winner in the 18th minutes of the extra time, following a 3-3 draw in the 90 minutes in front of a jam-packed San Siro. Oh, what a football game it was. The tie is described as the best UEFA Champions League semi-final in history. And that's it for sports.
And of course, all eyes will be glued on Arsenal PSG tonight's encounter in France. Thank you very much, Sankuli Janko, for details in the world of sports. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umu Danyogo for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Christopher Aticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your